you guys work for companies that were established in the mid-1800s when, you know, cutting edge technology was the typewriter and the turbine engine. And you are both coming to grips with a world where everything is really being driven by digital technology. So I wanted to talk to you, and you know, I come from the newspaper industry, and we know that the first thing it does is completely blow up your business model. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of how you get ahead of it, how you thrive in this environment. And so, John, your firm, from its relatively narrow roots, accounting and auditing, is now really representative of really a full-scale service firm. But services are undergoing so much transformation. We're living in an Uber and Airbnb world. It's moved from service to self-service. So how do you cope with this? How do you get ahead of it? How do you deal with the disruptors?
Well, first, thanks for having me
Sure.
with you today. It's great to be here. You know, I think Eric and I and every CEO, I don't care what sector you're talking about, professional services or industrial, et cetera, is dealing with this challenge of the disruption that they're facing. It's happening at a faster pace, I think, than it ever has. But, you know, we did a survey this past year of about 400 CEOs here in the US, and the number one concern when we asked them, what do you worry most about over the next 3 years? The answer was the relevancy of my products and services, because I'm really worried that literally 3 years from now, I will be irrelevant. Now, I think CEOs are paid to be paranoid. If you're not paranoid, you probably shouldn't be CEO. But that's a new level of paranoia that we've seen, and we've been doing this survey for some time. So I think we're all experiencing that. I think you react in different ways, but you've got to have innovation at your core. That means different things in different industries and sectors, obviously. But I think as CEO, you've got to be willing to challenge every assumption about your business model before somebody else disrupts it for you. And I think what we're seeing, certainly in our business, and I think in many of our clients' businesses, is a whole ecosystem of what kind of relationships do you need to have in the marketplace that you never worried about before. The kind of partnerships, alliances, what kind of acquisitions do we need to be making? You know, we've made 9 acquisitions in the last couple of years. We hadn't made an acquisition in the first 100 years of our existence. And so you're seeing a lot of different, I think, dimensions, which we could spend a lot of time talking about. But I do think this looking for innovation, whether that's organically, whether it's aligning with some folks who have a technology, have a capability that you don't think you need to own, but you need access to, or acquiring those skills that are going to take you too long to build organically. Some combination of those 3 things, I think, is what every CEO is trying to get a grip on.
And Eric, I cover politics normally, and
You have some ideas for me?
no, but you know, you go to the center of the country, places like your hometown of Youngstown, and you hear a lot of despair about where have the good jobs gone, where have the manufacturing jobs gone. And so when I was talking to you the other day, I was really surprised when you said that, in fact, you know, Siemens is finding that the United States is where they want to go to set up new kinds of manufacturing. And you used a couple of phrases that I thought were interesting, that essentially your business now is the Internet of Things. It's Industry 4.0. So could you talk a little bit about manufacturing and why you think the U.S. has a real future?
Yeah, I think what we're out talking a lot about and is already starting to happen, particularly in places like Germany and some other places in Europe and in the U.S., is really this Industry 4.0, which is really the 4th industrial revolution. And that's going to be digitally led. If you take a look at the U.S., we think because of that, the U.S. is the best place in the world to be doing it. So we talk about manufacturing. I really think this is where we're going to rebuild America's new middle class. and that's going to be done with the digital economy. So if you just take a look at the U.S., a lot of people talk about wage rates around the world are becoming more equal. We have a huge energy advantage now with low gas prices and oil prices even coming down, but gas, I think, is a big one driving. But that's not the real reason why we think manufacturing, for example, is going to be really big here. We've opened several new large plants here, and that's because of software. The U.S. develops about 70% of all the software in the world. Software, people call it the digital economy, but really software is what drives it. You were just out here a little while ago talking about some other companies, whether you're talking about Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Apple. I mean, they're largely software companies. And that's where the values migrate. Even Uber is a software company, taxi company, but it's a software company. And it's got a market cap of $45 billion. The value is migrating to software, and this software and the digital economy is going to really transform just about everything in our world today. So I like to say that the old world is dead. For the students in this audience, in 10 years, over half of you will be working in jobs that don't even exist today. And over the last 20 years, half the jobs that have been created didn't exist 15 to 20 years ago. So if the old world's dead, you better figure out what's changing and see how do I become part of what's changing. So in the manufacturing space, now what used to be, if you wanted to manufacture a lot of variety in your process, and we work with a lot of the golf club manufacturers, the automobile manufacturers, the aerospace companies, food and beverage companies, whoever you're talking about, now you can virtually design the product and automate it and manufacture it virtually. And what you see on the screen is what you get in the manufacturing process. And we call it digital twins. And the automotive industry is way ahead of everyone else. When you take a look at the F-150, for example, they're literally making thousands of different varieties of the F-150 every single day. Every time they used to change over 10, 15 years ago, they would have to stop production, change things over to remake it. Now that's all simulated on a computer and done. The productivity improvement in the auto industry in the last 15 years is 8 times. So if we take something, I was down at the biggest oil and gas conference in the world this week at CIRA. If you take a look at the oil industry, huge opportunities to really turn that into an advanced manufacturing process, digitize the industry, and drive productivity even further, which was the topic of the whole session over 4 days, because they've now with $50 oil, they got to bring their cost down. But that's going to drive tremendous growth, and tremendous growth in jobs and tremendous growth in productivity. And the U.S. is best positioned to take care of that, take advantage of that, because it's a big market. It's got technology and infrastructure and plants that need to be modernized. It's the world's leader in software. So everything fits together for the U.S. What doesn't fit together for the U.S. is skills. We've got a big skills issue, just in terms of, if you take a look, the U.S. has the world's leadership in training software engineers. You take a look at machines, the machines of today, machine tools that run manufacturing, the U.S. is not so strong. And if you take a look at the middle skills, basically the people that are going to work in these production facilities, the jobs have been upskilled dramatically. Everything is run by a robot, a computer, a laser. And so the kinds of people working in these plants need to have strong math skills. They need to have some engineering, some mechanical engineering, some electrical engineering. They have to understand computer science. Finding those people we have found to be tremendously difficult in the U.S. I mean, something like 10 to 15% of the high schools in this country today teach computer science. Just think about the world today. The whole world is run by computers. You take a look at a typical car, 10,000 computers in a typical car. I mean, everything out there is moving digital, yet we're still teaching the same things in K through 12 that we taught 50 years ago in this country. And the shame of it is, if I go to most of the universities and talk, how many people are learning about how the digital age is going to impact whatever they're studying. It doesn't matter what you're studying. Every job, I mean, look at the newspaper industry. Every industry is going to be dramatically changed by the digital economy. And so far, we've seen a lot of it on the consumer and the retail and the internet. But the whole industrial fabric, the way we make trains today at Siemens, everything is censored, everything is digitized. The way we optimize our supply chain for all of our products, the way we build power plants and monitor them, all of it is going to change dramatically. And it's not going to take a long time. In the next 5 to 10 years, the whole physical infrastructure, the whole footprint in this country is going to be dramatically different. And the people who are working in it are going to have to be dramatically different. So I'm saying the whole world is really dead. The U.S., though, we think is the best place to invest in that new world for a lot of reasons that I just went through. But there are some things that need to change.
So, and you're talking both about, college people who have college educations and people who don't. But before we go to questions in the audience, I'm going to ask one that I think is on the minds of a lot of the students in the audience, which is you both work for firms that do a fair amount of recruiting here at GW. So what are you looking for? Is it a major? Is it a GPA? Is it an attitude? What are you looking for?
Well, yes. By the way, we love recruiting at George Washington. It's a great program for KPMG. But, you know, I think some things are consistent with what we've always looked for in terms of individuals that show they've excelled in what they've done in school, which is a pretty good indicator of how they're going to do. But that's not enough anymore. And I think you're looking for people that have acquired some kind of global perspective, hopefully. Didn't necessarily need to study overseas, but hopefully have had some exposure to the kind of world they're going to be in when they join a firm like Siemens or KPMG, where you're no longer working on a team sitting next to you in Kansas City. You're working on a team on a daily basis, literally, virtually, with people from all over the world. And people that can manage that are going to be more successful with us. I think more and more so early in your career, because of how rapidly things have changed and evolved, the analytical skills that the students we're hiring today need to have, not 4 or 5 years after they've joined us and they've kind of learned how to acquire those skills. Technology has eliminated 80% of what, when I started 30-some years ago at KPMG, we used to do in our first couple of years. What the students who join us today are being asked to do are the things I was doing in my 3rd or 4th year with the firm. And it demands, I think, tremendous analytical capabilities. I think to the extent you've had a chance in your undergraduate or graduate career to get exposed to the kind of digital science areas that Eric is talking about, you're going to be well ahead, because I don't care what role you're performing, I don't care what sector you're in, an understanding of how digital transformation is going to affect almost every professional service job as well as industrial job is going to be important. So I think some things stay the same, your ability to team, work well with people, but I think this whole concept of the ability to analyze data in a way that you can glean insights for your client is becoming more and more important today.
So Eric, how does a potential job applicant present himself or herself to you and your recruiters as somebody who is prepared not only to do that job you're looking for now, but that job that you say doesn't even exist now and won't exist for another 10 years?
Well, I think a lot of the things that you talked about are absolutely true. Maybe one way to put it is, we have been bringing the German apprentice model to the U.S. because we're having, as I said, we're having difficulty finding people to work in our production facilities, for example. And we hire those students right out of high school. And it's a 3-year program. They go to school part-time and they work in the plant part-time. And after 3 years, they get jobs in the plant if they pass the courses. So we're expecting that for a lot of these new careers, we're going to have to train people. When we're recruiting people in colleges and universities, we're expecting that they've come down that learning curve quite a ways. And I think one of the most important things that we find is that we do much better with people who've got some real work experience, almost whatever it is, because you get back to the basics. We want people who show up, who work hard, who are adaptable, who can think critically, and who are going to be willing to change and change themselves and build new capabilities over time, because we don't know what they're going to be doing in 5 years, and they don't know what they're going to be doing in 5 years. Those days are long gone. So people who take a look at the world today and have been adapting themselves to where they see the world going and can show you that they've been thinking about what that means for them and how they've been preparing themselves are people who are probably going to do it over and over and over again in their career.
Well, I would like to turn it over to our audience. If there's, oh, I see somebody in the second row. And pardon me, by the way, if I'm squinting because the lights are sort of a little bit.
Don't let that woman ask a question.
Good afternoon, Eric and John.
Hello, Hillary. How are you?
Hello, John. How are you? I have a global question for both of you, a two-part question. Richard was here earlier, and you heard him say that, admit that he watches Downton Abbey, so you could call that British best practices of programming. Nothing to do with my accent. So my question is a global two-part question. Eric, you just mentioned you've talked a lot about trade schools in Germany, bringing the apprentice program to America. John, I know that KPMG has always said global strategy, local implementation. What are the best practices that you've seen abroad that you want to bring to your American firms? And what are the best practices that you think America has to offer professionally that you try to take to your firm globally, John, and Eric, you try to take back to Germany?
Well, maybe just, I'll just hit on a couple things quickly and then let you talk about that. But, you know, I mentioned a little while ago that in high schools in this country, in K through 12, very few schools have any kind of computer science or software engineering or whatever. And around the world, we donate our leading industrial software we grant it to college. In fact, we gave a grant here to George Washington a few months ago, about $30 million worth of that software. And so we grant it mostly to universities and community colleges in the US. Around the world, a lot of it gets granted to high schools. Problem in the US is the high schools can't even accept it because they say, who would teach the courses that we would use this software in? You know, I mean, everyone puts on their resume they know PowerPoint and Excel. Yeah, okay, who doesn't? The issue is what can you use that's going to add value to you in the future and can help our business, right? And so that's why around the world, these schools are asking for the more advanced stuff so they can redesign their curriculum and start working toward the jobs of the future. Very difficult here in the US. So that's one of the best practices that we see. The second thing that we see in places like Germany and other parts of Europe is that the schools spend a lot of time working with business, the community colleges and universities, to understand where the jobs are going. And what do we need to do to adapt our curriculum and to make sure we got the right programs, the right technology, the right tools in place. And that also makes it much easier to intern those people from those schools into the jobs because they're training people to look like their jobs. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to be developing a training program in college for it because, you know, I think there's definitely a big role for liberal arts colleges, et cetera. But in this country, the bigger problem we have is we're not churning out enough people who have the skills that can start in the workforce today. There's too many people that are taking things where they need to be retrained. And so I think a best practice would be, you know, start adapting the curriculum and the teaching and the capabilities earlier, adapt to the, and then at the college university level, get more connected with where the business world is going. That will help you place your students better, but it'll also help you get them more ready for the jobs of the future. So,
maybe just real briefly, I think one thing that I think is different outside the U.S. than in the U.S., at least a lot of places, take the U.K. and some other places in Europe as an example. I think the education, both elementary, high school, and frankly university level, is much more what I would characterize as principles-based outside the U.S. as opposed to kind of rote learning in the U.S., which I think has ex-U.S. folks better prepared for the world that I think they're going to be entering in many respects, that analytical world, as opposed to learning knowledge when, frankly, if your job's going to be completely different 5 years from now than exists today, that knowledge, the facts you're learning in university here today are going to be a lot less relevant than whether or not you've learned how to process information, how to do that analysis. And frankly, I think they do a better job of that outside the U.S. Having said that, I think we do a fantastic job in the U.S. of graduating students that have really learned how to work in teams. And that is very different than what I see in many places outside the U.S., where you get very bright, very hardworking individuals who really struggle, in many cases, to share knowledge and effectively work in a team, whereas I think universities in the U.S. for a number of years now have really embraced the concept of team learning and team projects that I think have people better prepared from that standpoint.
We have a question right here.
Eric and John, just to your last point, John, about the university in our country has been attracting talents from all over the world, whether by intention or unintention, to come here to study because we promote great learning experience for them. And we attract all these talents, and yet our laws sort of prevent our companies here in the U.S. to be able to keep them once they go to school here, and many of them have to go back. So, you know, I know we have many lawmakers in this room, given that we're in Washington, D.C. Eric, what would be your comment to the lawmakers about the immigration reform bill that has passed the Senate but didn't get to the House, and that prevent, you know, our companies to be able to keep these talents in the country? And John, really quick question to you also about the newly promoted CEO who is going to be a woman at KPMG. I believe her name is Miss Lynn Dorothy. So I used to work at an accounting firm, and I know when we started our first year as a staff, we have just as many women as men, sometimes more. But yet at the partners level, it's been a lot less female than male partners. But given this change, you think that's going to be shifting in terms of having more female executive in the accounting professionals? Thank you.
Okay, so we start with immigration and we move on to gender advancement.
Well, maybe just quickly on the immigration, you know, I think, you know, we think just like we ought to have more free trade agreements, we think we ought to have, you know, free access for people, particularly people who are educated here, who come to school here. Like you said, we bring a lot of people in here. We used to do a much better job of keeping a lot of that talent here. I mean, all the data shows that those people are going to create jobs for 4 to 5, at a pace about 4 to 5 times what we bring in. You know, we have a lot of engineers, a lot of scientists in this country. I think we hire over 1,500 engineers, just engineers a year. I forget the number of scientists, but it's a lot. And oftentimes we've had difficulty finding the number of people we need in time for, say, major projects or whatever. So just operating with people on visas and things sometimes can slow down projects or development or research. Along with things like, you know, we haven't renewed the R&D tax credit and other things. So we're falling behind other countries in both those, attracting and keeping the talent, but also keeping a lot of those high-end jobs here in the country. So I think an easy solution, a lot of people have said it, is when you get your diploma, you know, staple a green card to it or whatever, keep people here. I think it would be a great thing for the economy.
I agree. And on diversity, you know, first, thanks for keeping up on the firm. We just announced my successor as I move on to be our global chairman here in the U.S. And I think it's been a huge focus of KPMG. Frankly, I think the profession has done a fantastic job over the years of emphasizing not just diversity, but what I talk a lot about at KPMG. Diversity is one thing, it's important, but diversity without having created a really inclusive culture doesn't do you a lot of good. So we spent a lot of time focused on what kind of culture have we created at KPMG, and I'm really proud of it. I'm very proud of the fact that as I left my job here in Washington as a managing partner of our Washington office, I was succeeded by a woman who happens to be here today, who's fantastic. And as I leave my role as chairman and CEO in the U.S., I'm going to be succeeded by another outstanding woman. And I think it shows, I'm obviously proud of what that shows about KPMG, but again, frankly, I think the profession, for all the students out there, this is my paid infomercial for the profession, I think it is a phenomenal place to start a career because of the opportunities that it's a real meritocracy where you show you can do well and you're going to do well in the firm. And I think that's what you want when you're coming out of school.